My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Welcome to the third Casio Edifice Showdown. This is a recurring series on the channel where I put two very cool Casio Edifice watches against one another in a number of categories. The winner of the showdown lives on as the champion, and the loser is sold from the collection. So today on the left we have the reigning champion, the EFV-100D, and the new challenger, the EFV-130D. Now, in Showdown number 2, the EFV-100D won out ever so slightly. So, is it going to live on as champion in Showdown 3? We will have to see. So while I was perusing Edifice models, as I do quite regularly, I noticed this EFV-130D. I loved the white dial and the black bezel. It just felt like a very striking combination, so I purchased one to review. Now, the reviews of both these watches are available in my channel and should be popping up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen now, so check them out if you want all the details, because today we're just going to be comparing the two. This isn't really a full review. So the way this works is both watches are judged in a number of categories. The winner gets a star, or in the event of a tie, no stars are awarded. The watch with the most stars at the end will be crowned the champion. Now, before we begin, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So starting with the case. Now, the cases on both of these are really well done, especially for the price point. It's a combination of high polish and brush surfaces. There's some really good transitions there. However, this case is 40 millimeters, and then the case on the Challenger is 42 millimeters. So while the cases are similar and the level of finishing is similar, I'm just going to have to give it to the Champion because I just prefer that 40 millimeter case size. So that first star is going to go to our Champion, the EFV-100D. So the next category is crystal, and both of these just have mineral glass. I don't think there's any AR coating applied, so it's going to be a tie here. Now, if you'll remember in Challenge 2, I was looking at a sapphire crystal Casio Edifice, so it obviously got the star, but in here, there's really not much difference in these two crystals. So the third category is the dial. Now this dial does appear black, but in the right lighting conditions you can see this really cool gray sunburst effect. Overall, it's very visually interesting. It plays with light in a lot of fun ways, and I love the dial on the Champion. However, the Challenger also has a cool dial. It's stark white, but then very similarly, in the right lighting conditions, there's a sunburst effect. It's a little bit harder to pick up than on the black dial, but it's definitely there, and it makes this dial, I feel, just as interesting and dynamic. So I actually gave a tie in the dial category. So heading into the fourth category, it's 1-0 for the Champion, still very close. Now hands are the next category. I do love the gabled hands on the Champion. They catch light on one side or the other, depending on the lighting conditions, and the minute hand is plenty long, and then that hour hand, I love the arrow-tipped hour hand, and then there's that nice playful splash of color. It's like an orange. That is the water resistance on the dial and the tip of that second hand. And then the hands on the Challenger are actually similar. So they're also gabled, so they do catch light on one side or the other. The minute hand is also quite long. And then rather than a arrow hour hand, there's this interesting, it's kind of still like a sword style, but they put that, there's a chevron there in the middle, about halfway down, that kind of helps differentiate the hour hand from the minute hand. And then instead of orange, there's a splash of blue for the water resistance and the tip of the second hand. Overall, however, I am going to give this category to the Champion. There's something about these two hands. I just love the hour and the minute hand, and they are just superior in my opinion. So the Champion pulls ahead 2-0. Now next is Indices. Now the indices on both these watches are applied, and they do a great job. They're Lume in the middle. Lume's not that great, but it helps with the white contrast against the dial. And then the edges are all high polish, so the indices catch light in a lot of interesting and dynamic ways. The Challenger is similar. They're also applied that kind of same style with Lume in the middle and then high polish along the sides. However, there's a small difference on this. I love that they did a double index at the 12 o'clock position. I actually really like it. Makes it a little bit easier to orient and easier to read the time. So I'm actually going to give Indices, while they're very similar, to the Challenger because of that double index at 12 o'clock. So if you've watched my reviews, you know that I hate the Lume on these Casio Edifice models. It's not responsive. It's not very bright, and it doesn't last very long, so it kind of fails in all three categories that I judged Lume with. So I just went ahead and gave this category a tie. I don't like the Lume on either of these watches. Now the next category is bracelets. The bracelets are very similar. They're brushed on the outside, high polish on the inside, and then they have a double push to plant with just a pressed metal. However, there's only 2 micro positions on this clasp, so it's a little bit of a knock on it. It's going to be a little bit harder to find the right size with only those 2 micro positions, because the Challenger actually has 4 micro positions, which I much prefer to see 4 micro positions. However, I was a little hasty when I did this review, and some comments pointed out that this is actually not a 20 millimeter lug width. This is a 21 millimeter lug width, and that's a terrible size that should never be done. You are going to have a heck of a time finding aftermarket straps for this, and part of the fun of a watch, I feel, is always switching out the bracelet for straps. 1, you might not like the bracelet, and 2, a new strap kind of makes the watch feel brand new all over again. So despite having 4 micro positions, I'm really frowning upon that 21 millimeter lug width, and I'm going to have to give the star to the Champion that uses a nice, clean, easy to find aftermarket strap 20 millimeter lug width. So the Champion is in a comfortable lead of 3 stars to 1 star as we move into the movement category. Now, these movements are essentially the same. They're both going to be accurate to like plus or minus 20 seconds a month. They both have 3-year battery lives, and actually I listened to them both very closely. Now, they're both audible, you can hear the tick, but neither one is that loud. Some of these quartz watches, especially in the more affordable range, have a really loud tick, so loud that if you leave it on your bedside table, you might not be able to sleep. It might sound deafening in the middle of the night, but neither of these, it's not the case for either of these. The tick it's definitely audible, but it's not deafening. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a tie. These are basically similar movements with a similar amount of sound produced. So the next category is water resistance, and both of these watches feature 100 meters of water resistance. And importantly, they both feature screw-down crowns. While technically you don't need a screw-down crown to ensure water resistance, what a screw-down crown does is help the crown from accidentally deploying while you're in a water situation, which then would be a breach into the case itself. So it is nice to have that screw-down crown. It's just a little bit of extra comfort if you're going to swim, that you know the crown's not going to deploy while you're doing your water activity and flood the watch. So since they're both 100 meters of water resistance and they both have screw-down crowns, this category is a tie. So the last category is overall, and I'm going to give a wrist shot while I describe my overall feelings of both of these watches. First, I just love the 40 millimeter case here. I think it's the perfect size for me. I think it just fits my wrist the way I like it to fit, and it's really hard for me to beat 39 or 40 millimeter watches, and this one just looks great. There's something about the super legible dial and that handset. I'm just in love with this watch. And then as far as the Challenger, that 42 millimeter case size, I can still definitely pull it off. And I think the bezel actually makes it wear a little bit smaller just because the dial is not as big. And I really thought I was going to like this one. I thought I would give it the Challenger a run for its money, but just getting them both on wrist, there's something I really like about the Challenger still. And knowing that this has a 21 millimeter lug width, it just does kind of ruins it for me. I think if you like the bracelet and you like the overall style, this watch is going to be fine for you, but I do like to switch things out onto straps, so I'm going to have to give the overall star to the Champion. So if you've been following along at home, keeping score, you will know that the Champion has 4 stars and the Challenger has 1. So the Challenger was smoked by the Champion in this round and will be sold from the collection. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I know a lot of you have been asking for some of the more middle-priced Casio Edifices in the $200 to $300 mark, and I might try to get one of those in for the channel. The one problem I have is a lot of them are huge. They're like 44 or 45 millimeters. So if you know of one of those more expensive, some of them have like Bluetooth functionality. If you can find me a Casio Edifice in the $200 to $300 range that's 40 millimeters, please suggest it in the comments and I will definitely get one in for review, and maybe it will be featured in Casio Edifice Showdown 4. That's it for today. Let me know if you agree with my scoring. Maybe you like that Challenger and I'm totally wrong about this Champion. Yeah, let me know in the comments below. And then, as always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the content of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.